If you have a child under the age of 8 that struggles with staying focused, then this video is for you. Hi, my name is Dr. Cindy Hevington. I'm a mom of 3 with a doctorate degree in neuroscience, and today I'm going to walk you through what it looks like to stay focused for a child, what we should expect from a child, and tips to help you develop your child's focused attention or concentration skills to help them at home and in school. I am the founder of Neuron, which is an online resource for parents to help you understand how your child learns about emotions and how their brain develops. And I am the co-founder of the Wonder Grade app, which is an app that helps children develop emotion regulation skills. I often get the question from parents asking me why their child can't stay focused for a long period of time. And I think that there are lots of misconceptions around this. And today I want to highlight that and also bring in a bit of the research and science so that you can have some tools to help your child. In today's video, I also want to highlight OuiSi Nature cards. My children and I received this game over the holidays and have been playing it for a few months now, and we're in love with this game. We literally take it out every single day for different reasons, and I want to show you what the reasons are and help you and your family, as well as if you are an educator, help you in your classroom so that you can have very easy games that you could apply and help your kids develop attention spans. In a recent blog post on curiousneuron.com, I highlighted how we can help nurture a child's curiosity through OuiSi Nature cards. But today, I really want to focus on the attention span of a child because it is a very common question. I also want to highlight today that concentration skills are part of a bigger picture called executive function skills. And sometimes I find that we are very quick to label a child who's struggling with attention as perhaps having ADHD, but there's a lot more to attention than that. First, a child could struggle with any cognitive skill, including memory, executive functions, or specifically attention, without having necessarily ADHD. Secondly, like I said before, if they do struggle with executive functions, those are skills that involve organization and planning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after, then we do have to target that specifically to help a child with their attention skills. So it's very complicated, and I think that if you are questioning any of these, that it's really worth speaking to your doctor about it, because you do have neuropsychologists or certain therapists that help you develop cognitive skills specifically, and you can get some help in that area. Today, it's not about somebody who's had a diagnosis, but if you are noticing some differences in your child, then there are certain activities that you can do through play that can support your child's attention span or their concentration skills. It happens very often that I get an email from a parent who has a younger child under the age of 3 that believes that their child is struggling with attention. For example, if your child is 18 months or even 2 years old, you have to keep in mind that their attention span is still in its infancy. So attention span itself starts to develop around the age of 10 months, but there are other cognitive abilities that a child has to develop to kind of complement the development of their attention span as they get older. And a child who's around 1 or 2 years old they have an attention span that's around so you take their age in numbers. This is not a scientifically proven way, but it's just to give you an estimate. So you can take their age in numbers. For example, if they're 2 years old, take 2 minutes, and then you add 3 to 5 minutes to that. So a child who's 2 years old, their concentration skills should be around 5 minutes. You can have children that can focus much longer than that and much shorter than that, but that's your average, and that's kind of your guiding light to help you see if you do need to help your child work on these skills. And when I say concentration skills, when we think of adults, an adult's attention span or concentration skills are about 20 to 30 minutes. We can't expect a very young child to stay focused for 20 to 30 minutes if that is what our max is, right? So if we think about being in a meeting, we could focus for 15, 20 minutes, but by that 20, 30 minutes, oftentimes we are thinking about something else. We're focusing on something else in our minds. We get distracted very easily. And that's where all the different attentional networks come in and the different cognitive skills come in to helping you stay focused. They have a maximum, they reach a limit, and they're not able to stay at their fullest potential for so long, and that's why we have an attention span. When it comes to children, again, because they're developing these skills, it's nowhere close to what an adult's attention span could be. We could extend this. I did this with my children when they were much younger. Novelty helps a young child develop their focused attention. So if you are offering a new toy, or I don't know if you've ever given your child something from your office or the kitchen that is new, even if it's a whisk, for example, and you have a toddler, it's new to them, and that novelty will keep them focused for a little bit longer. So you can do that. And then I used to use some sensory bins as well. And these sensory bins would have like dried beans or some water and some rice sometimes, or pom-poms, anything that was very different, but that kind of sensation and that sensory aspect to it would keep them interested much longer. So those are ways that you can help a young child. But today I also want to help you develop an older child's attention span through games that I will explain in just a few minutes. Before we move on to that, we're going to go back to the science of our attention, our ability to stay focused. So you have selective attention. So if I show you a Where's Waldo book or a search and find book, and I ask you to look for the red cap, you're going to use your selective attention skills to zone into the page. But then you also have to inhibit. So if you see a cap that happens to be blue, your brain has to tell you, nope, not that one. Get rid of that. Don't focus on that, but focus on the red cap that you need to find. So that is an inhibition sort of skill that is also involved in attention. If you think about reading a book on the subway or the bus, you're focusing on what you're reading, but you also have to inhibit the noise that's around you that might be distracting you, somebody walking in front of you. The same thing happens with a child. If they're in the classroom and they've maxed out their capacity for their attention span, every little thing will distract them. So we have to keep in mind that children have a certain length for their attention span and work with it. And the more we're aware and mindful of how their brain works, then we can support them in their learning journey and help them develop these skills, because attention span and concentration skills are skills. So that means that we have to help our child develop these skills. And the best part about attention is that we can help them develop these skills through play. Another aspect of attention that is very interesting to me as somebody who studied mental health for a doctorate degree and emotional learning is that there is an aspect or component to emotional learning or emotion regulation skills. There's an attentional aspect to that. So if you think of a toddler who has their toy taken away from them at preschool, it's very easy to express all the emotions and it looks like it's misbehavior, but that child will have to focus in on the fact that they lost that toy for now, for example, if they have no choice and they can't get it back. But at some point, they're going to have to inhibit the thought that they want that toy back and play with something else. That is a skill that a child has to learn at a young age, that inhibition part. And we can't just learn that on our own. It's, again, something that we learn through play. So if you think of the game called Simon Says, that is a classic inhibition game. But that sort of way of inhibiting is much easier for older kids. If you have a child who's under the age of 6, then the game of Simon Says, where you have to, if I say Simon Says, then I can say Simon Says, touch your nose, you touch your nose. But if I don't say Simon Says, you don't touch your nose, you have to inhibit the fact that I said touch your nose and not do it, even if you heard it. With younger kids in research, what they use are these day and night tasks. And if I show you a picture of daytime, you have to say night. But if I show you a picture of nighttime, you have to say day. So you're inhibiting what you're looking at, and you have to activate your attention networks to say what you're supposed to say. Part of that is also your memory. You have to remember what the rule was, and that's your executive function skills. So it gets kind of complicated. What I love about the OuiSi Nature cards is that every single aspect of attention is brought into the game. These are sets of cards and images, nature images actually, that you have to look for connections. And there are 4 ways that you can find connections: shape, pattern, you can find connections through color and concept. And these are the 4 ways that you can connect all the cards. If you happen to have a card that is a flower, depending on the game that you are playing, you're going to have to look at your opponent's cards or the cards that are in front of you and try to match it according to the 4 categories that I gave you. So you're practicing that focused attention where you're kind of zoning in on whether it's going to be the pattern or the color or the concept. But then you also have to inhibit the fact that you might see something else that's catching your attention, but it has nothing to do with the 4 types of connection. So I love the fact that with one game, you can be practicing various types of attention and using the different attentional networks of the brain to build these skills. I'd like to say a quick word on things or aspects that can impact a child's attentional ability. The first one is the most obvious one, and that's sleep. We feel it as adults as well. If we haven't slept very well and we have to focus at work, we often get distracted very easily, and that's because our system is tired. Then there's also, the fact that we might be hungry or dysregulated. Dysregulation is something that I'm personally trying to get the word out a lot more, because we often don't think about a system being dysregulated or a child being dysregulated. So if a child is coming back from school and there was lots of noise, or if the TV has been on in the background, or a child's been watching TV for a long time, sometimes their own system gets dysregulated. And that means that they might have bigger emotions when you say something to them. If you say no, it means that they might misbehave, and it might look like them misbehaving, but it's actually their system being dysregulated, and they no longer have control to the prefrontal cortex, which is behind their forehead, and that's the rational thinking part of their brain. So we have to keep that in mind, because being dysregulated does impact how you stay focused. I wish that all educators, knew this, and all parents knew this, because that would mean that we would change what happens at home. Think about a child who comes home from school. If their system is dysregulated, and we know that has an impact on their attentional networks, and we have them sit down at the table and want them to stay still and focus and study and do their homework, they might not necessarily be able to, because their system is dysregulated. So if we actually take the time to think of why their system is dysregulated, or figure out why, is it because they need connection with us? That connection kind of brings their system down. And when we're dysregulated, our heart rate is higher, maybe slightly higher. Our breathing rate is slightly higher. We might, again, it might be the senses. So the sounds and the sights that are around us that might make our system feel unsafe. And as soon as our system feels unsafe, could be an argument happening in the background with our parents, or something happening at school, or a bully that we're worried about at recess. In that moment, even though we are sort of safe, our system doesn't feel safe. And when our nervous system doesn't feel safe, it sets off that fight or flight, as if there were a tiger or a bear in front of us, but there isn't. It's just that our system itself doesn't feel safe. And when our system doesn't feel safe, emotions are bigger, and the thinking part of the brain doesn't function the same way. So we have to really keep that in mind before we start homework with a child, or any type of learning, whether it's in the classroom, at home. Because if their system is dysregulated, if they're tired, if they're hungry, then their attention span is going to be much shorter. Same thing applies for us as adults as well. The third part that I wanted to mention was, I wanted to bring back executive function skills. Again, those are skills that help you plan and organize and remember and stay focused and self-regulate. If a child is really struggling with routine, and if a child often forgets a book at school, or their agenda, or bringing something to have it signed at home, then those might be signs that a child is struggling with executive function skills. If they really struggle with projects at school, and when they're told to create an assignment or a project, they actually don't know where to begin, or what's the next step, or how to organize it, or how to plan it. Those again are signs that they might be struggling with executive function skills. Those are some signs. And I really recommend that you do speak to your doctor about it, because there are people out there that can help you develop these cognitive skills. They are all skills, which means that we can work on them and improve them. All right. So here are some activities that you can do with the OuiSi Nature cards. It is so easy to have them in your home or in the classroom, and incorporate some of these brain breaks, or these easy ways to step away from learning and reconnect, your child to their thinking parts of their brain, or just refocus. I want this to become something regular within homes, because the more we can do this, the more a child could focus and concentrate on what they're doing. Also, I think it's important and also empowering for a child to recognize their own signs of when they are feeling dysregulated. So if you do have a child at home that often starts to fidget, or look around, or is clearly not focusing on what they're reading, ask them, how did you know? I could see physically from the outside that you are not concentrating anymore. Can you feel it on the inside? Can you feel your thoughts, moving away from what you're reading? Can you feel your body wanting to move a little bit more and feeling uncomfortable on the chair? Bring it into their awareness so that they can recognize when they're losing concentration, and then they can ask you, you know what, I need time to refocus. It's empowering and important for them to learn this as students. And then once they, are able to recognize this, you could bring in the OuiSi Nature cards to either disconnect them from what they're doing. You can take 5 minutes. You can play games that we see people have put into an amazing little book here that comes with 15 different games that you can play with your child. Or you can do like what I do. Sometimes my kids just need to disconnect for a moment. I have 3 kids, ages 3, 5, and 7. And what I like to do is after lunch, we have a sort of routine to regulate our systems. I noticed that after lunch is when the energy is a little bit higher, and after dinner as well. So what I like to do is we read right after lunch. Then we listen to some meditations and calm down tools on the Wondergrade app. And then we also bring in either a board game, a card game, or the OuiSi Nature cards. That is an easy way for my kids to find a way to connect the cards. My 3, 5, and 7-year-olds, they can all do it. We could play the games as they are in the book. We can just look at them together. They like looking at the pictures and creating stories. My older kids, my 5 and 7-year-olds, really like OuiSi Scavenger Hunt, because what they like to do is grab one of the cards in the deck and then walk around the house to find something that looks like it. So they might bring back a pencil, for example, for this one, or a pencil that has a pom-pom at the top of it, something that really helps them make a connection with the object that they're looking at. And again, it could be because of the concept, the color, the pattern, or the shape. So there are different ways to make connections. My kids love that, and I love that too, because it gets them to move around a little bit. I also like the open-ended kind of play with OuiSi cards. What I especially love about these cards is, as a mom who's homeschooling her kids, are the QR codes at the back of the cards. So I love using tech to help my kids learn. I think it's a powerful tool, but I also love finding ways to move away from tech sometimes and away from the screens. This way, you get to play around with the game and the cards and have lots of fun doing it. But then you could flip it and use the QR code to see, what is this image? It brings you to the OuiSi website, and you get to discover what the image is, or sometimes it's zoomed in, and on the website they zoom out so you can see the entire picture, find out where it was taken, which country, what is the picture. My kids and I will have these competitions to try to figure out, like, what is this picture? Who's going to find the answer first on the internet without scanning the QR code? So there are lots of ways that you can play with the cards that way, by following what you have in the booklet or by creating a game of your own. I think this is also a fun way to incorporate these brain breaks in the classroom or at home. When it's at home, just taking a couple minutes when you notice your child isn't staying focused anymore and helping them reconnect with their body and their brain. And I think that the more we could realize that we don't have to power through all of our homework in an hour or two, that we can actually get up and step away from it and come back to it in a really simple way. I think it helps kids feel more in control of what they're doing. And it's not about, saying you're not going to do your homework, but it's about saying, I need you to do your homework when you're fully focused and that you can concentrate. When it comes to the classroom, and if you have lots of students in the classroom, there's a really fun way that I've created with my kids that you can also do in your classroom. And that's this kind of silent OuiSi game that I created. And what you could do with your kids, if you notice that all the kids are really not staying focused, or even if they are focused, you do want to take a moment to step away from what you're doing. I would recommend that you give each of your students one of the OuiSi cards, and then they're not allowed to speak. This is the fun part. And they walk around the classroom and try to find somebody whose card matches or connects with their own card without speaking. So one child might connect with somebody because they feel like the shape is very similar, and somebody might come and think that, well, the concept is pretty similar. After about 5 minutes, the teacher could put a timer for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever time you want. I recommend something around 5 minutes so that you put a bit of a rush to it. and then figure out what were the reasons everybody connected, and see if they did connect for the same reasons or if they connected for completely different reasons, and get a bit of a laugh out of it. That way you get to get up, you move, you regulate the child's nervous system, and once they come back and sit down, they will be focused much better than they were before if they were struggling with staying concentrated on what they're doing. Another short way to incorporate OuiSi in homework time or even in the classroom is to grab any card and to play I Spy. And what you could do is grab a card and then look around the home and look for something without getting up. You need to stay at your seat for this version, or you could get up. You could do whatever you want. But we like to sit down and say, I spy with my little eye, and then try to describe something that looks or connects to the card that you are holding in your hands. And then the people around you have to guess what it is. Again, this is one that my 5 and 7-year-olds really like. My 3-year-old likes to play the domino version and really have them in front of him and try to connect the card that he's holding in his hand with the ones that are scattered in front of him. He likes that sit down version, but my 5 and 7-year-olds love moving around and trying to see which connections they can make around them. Lastly, as I mentioned, as a homeschooling mom, I think that these are fantastic in terms of STEM and scientific thinking. What we like to do is just open the deck of cards and look at them, and then find some that we are interested in that day. Maybe one day I have a child who's interested in the animals, or another day my children might be interested in plants. They have their interests, and what we do is we talk about what we see, the colors of it, where we could imagine it might live in this world. And then we scan the QR code and the learning extends from there. We can create a project around it. We could discover more things and search for it and come up with questions, 3 questions we might have about this particular animal in front of us. What I like is that some of the cards, when you look at them, you don't know what it is. And I love that, because then we can make guesses and a hypothesis. And do we think, what type of animal is it? Is it a reptile? Is it a fish? Is it a mammal? And why do we think it's that? And then once you scan that QR code right behind the card, it's going to bring you to the website, and then you could extend the learning from there. So definitely a very powerful tool when it comes to building concentration skills, but also when it comes to scientific thinking and STEM learning. And the last part that I like about this is obviously the connection part, not just the connection part in terms of finding connections between the cards, but within our family. I love taking the time to connect with my kids. And when we do that, I notice that their attention span, their concentration skills, their cup is full, and they're able to focus much longer. So there's a well-being aspect to this, especially if you have a child who's anxious. Taking the time to sit with them, play with them, and to help them focus on something will make them feel safer in their environment. Again, going back to that nervous system. And again, I really do think that we should have these in our home and our classrooms to help kids build on their attention span. I hope that you gained a better understanding of the OuiSi Nature cards and how you can support your child's development of their concentration skills. You can follow Curious Neuron on Instagram at curious_neuron. You can also visit our website at curiousneuron.com. You can listen to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch our podcasts here. If there are requests for other games or skills that you'd like your child to develop, you can put them in the comments below. Let me know if you're trying this at home and if you see a difference in your child's attention skills after. Give it a couple weeks, just like going to the gym. It takes time to develop. Thank you for listening to today's episodes. Below in the show notes, you can find the link to the blog post that will help you understand how you can use OuiSi Nature cards to nurture your child's curiosity, another very important skill. And you will also find the link to purchase the OuiSi Nature cards below. Thanks for joining me. Bye.